Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our conversation. My name is Kate Charters, and I'm the chair of SEGRA, which is the acronym for Sustainable Economic Growth for Regional Australia. SEGRA is delighted to welcome you to this eighth of our conversations about COVID-19 and regional, rural and remote Australia. Pleased to say we've been fully subscribed for this timely initiative, and so it won't be possible for people to talk during the panel discussion and interact directly with us, but if you could please use the chat button. We'd really like to hear from people who are listening to us, either with ideas that are happening in their own regions or with questions with our opportunities that we have today with Teona, cousin from Mackay Regional Council. Welcome, Teona. Great to have you here. And of course, Robert Prestipino as well. So there's a chat box on the bottom right-hand corner, and I strongly encourage you to use this to have both input and questions. We also will review all the comments for input into future sessions, ideas for what we might cover in another conversation. The recording of this event will be available on the SEGRA website later today on our YouTube channel. You'll also notice at the top of the chat, we have a link to the resources that we've put together. So there's various websites that people might find of interest. So really, as this pandemic races across the world and the Australian state and territory governments act to address what can only be described as an unfolding situation, SEGRA wanted to provide a forum where people who live, work and invest in regional Australia could advance the issues impacting on regional, rural and remote Australia. And so whilst there are things that apply across the nation, there are specific things that are particularly pertinent in regional Australia, and that's what we're wanting to drill into today. So the idea of this webinar is to assist in bringing together key issues and opportunities while hearing firsthand from people tackling the impacts of COVID-19. We've been putting together a bit of a mud map about the various impacts that being felt across the broader economy, education, business, lifestyle and well-being, to name a few. But we are also today and last week focusing particularly on our Mainstreet businesses and how they're being affected. Robert, have you got your mud map to put up?
Not today, Kate.
Okay, it's changed from last week and it's fairly settled, I think, but it is available on our website. Well, look, Teona, I might turn to you now then. Welcome and thank you very much for participating. Can I invite you to tell us a bit about what Mackay Regional Council's been doing?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kate, and thanks for having me. I guess, like most regions, it's been a different experience here to the capital cities, where we haven't had any community transmission in Mackay, so we're really grateful for that. And we've only had 15 cases in our region, and they've all been isolated and quarantined as they should be. So it's been a different experience, and obviously we're still subject to the social distancing measures and the shutdowns that occurred across different industry sectors with gyms and beauticians and restrictions on pubs and clubs and the like. So while we're all being cautious, yeah, it's certainly different to what we're seeing happening in the capital city. So I did put some slides together just to show some ways that agencies have stepped in and council, and also there's been some great community responses to this as well, and really that support local, buy local message has never been stronger. It's always important in the regions, but all of a sudden it's just been this huge wave of support behind our local businesses, and we're seeing some really innovative ideas come out of our small traders, which has been great to see. They've been forced to do it, but really a lot of them have taken on this challenge. And you're talking about that percentage split, we are seeing, yeah, there are a few leaders of the pack that are going out first, but we're hoping in time that they'll see some examples of what other businesses are doing and follow on. So I'll just share my screen here and run through some examples. So hopefully you can see that now. It'll work as it should. That's what we've got. Yeah, it's there. All right, just see if I can scroll through. So I guess at the moment, like most local governments, we're in what we're calling a response. We're not at recovery yet. And it depends on how long and how deep this goes. And that's the $1 million question at the moment that no one really has the answer to. So initially, we've formed an economic response group locally, and that's an interagency group trying to bring a level of coordination to what we're doing. So it's RDA, Council, Greater Whitsunday Alliance, which is our external ED agency, the Queensland Government, for those not in Queensland, that's the Department of State Development, our local chamber, Mackay Tourism, which is our regional tourism organisation, and Resource Industry Network, which represents our heavy industrial sector, because obviously mining is a big component of our regional economy up here. Off the back of that, Council has also announced, like many other councils, a support package. At the moment, we don't have a council declared. They've finalised the counts from our local government election, but we have the mayor, but we don't have our council finalised at this point. So it's been interesting times for us up here. But what we're focused on is around those fees and charges that we can control. The CEO has been really clear that this is step one in what will be future rounds, and we're looking at ways we can incentivise, and that will depend on the gaps that are covered by state and federal government and those industries and sectors that were hardest hit. But a lot of our incentives at the moment are around fees and charges. So what part of what happened immediately, and I was actually on leave at the time and had to scramble back across the border before they closed, but this happened really quickly, and the Economic Development Agency group, Greater Whitsunday Alliance, kicked this off and set up a Facebook page and a campaign around We Pledge Local. So through that, there's been a private business Facebook group set up, a public Facebook group around that takeaway, delivery, click and collect, a lot of what Robert talked about last week, and also a range of free online events using local providers. So everything from meditation, fitness and health, and also some training. There's been a lot of focus around business wanting to go digital and online. So that's been a focus in the last couple of weeks. So they're just free programs that are starting to roll out. It just builds a bit of that community support around our business community at the time, right now. This has been really interesting. So this is a Facebook group that's set up. Purely a community member took this on, and you can see there in the points that there's 9,500 members on this page, which was only started on the 23rd of March, which has been quite incredible to watch it unfold. And it's all around, most of it is food-based. But it's around who's doing takeaways and who's doing delivery. So I don't think there's been ever a time in Mackay I've seen so much food on my Facebook feed. And I'm just blown away by what the businesses are doing, and those businesses that have evolved to offer takeaway that haven't done it before. So it's been phenomenal. It's been very positive. There's been a couple of members of the public use it as an opportunity to criticise or provide bad feedback, and it gets shut down pretty quick, which is good to see. So it's all in the spirit of everyone trying their best in this time and really trying to get those positive messages out there. But there's certainly some businesses out there that I never knew existed before this page was set up. So it's been great to see. And of no involvement of council, it just purely happened organically this way. So it's been really good. This is a little campaign that council is leading. We're getting a lot of feedback from our city centre traders, and we do have a levy that we collect for our city centre that people are confused about what they can and can't do, and what are the essential services and what's going on. And the city feels very closed. Even though they're trading in different ways, there's barely any cars in the city. The streets are really quiet where there used to be on-street dining. So it's a very different feel, and it's not comfortable for a lot of people, and it feels really different. So we're trying to bring in the human element to this. So we're working with one of our local creative agencies, and they've come up with this campaign. This is very much the first cut of it. They're out filming this week, and we're calling it The Faces Behind the Places. And it's about bringing the people back, those owners, those sole traders that are still working in their businesses. They might not be in their shop, or they're at home, or they are in there with the doors closed. But trying to make that connection so you can see who you're supporting and why it's important that we support these businesses through this time. So I'm really excited. We should get some of our first footage from that later this week, and we're really excited to start to roll out this campaign. So the themes are unite, adapt and believe, and it's about just bringing that community spirit, and in a genuine and sincere way. We don't want it to be a pitch or a sell. It's just about bringing those faces back in where there's people now missing. So this is one of the scripts I've got up on the screen at the moment, and this is one of 3 little video pieces we're putting together, and we'll look to expand this as we need to and change the messaging. Just doing this online because things were moving so quickly in those first couple of weeks with the restrictions, that we wanted something we could pull down and replace really quickly, where TV and radio is a bit harder to do that. So we're very much basing this online. So you can see it's just that really genuine, heartfelt message about supporting our city, so they're still here at the end of all this, and when life starts to return to a level of normal. Some interesting things that have been happening here, and these are all examples from our city centre where businesses have been forced into adapting in different ways. So some businesses have gone beyond even that takeaway and delivery, and they're doing take-home dinner boxes. So they're kind of vacuum-packed dinner boxes that you can buy. They come with instructions, and you can pick it up in the morning or sometime during the day, or they'll deliver. And then you can prepare the meal yourself at home. So I did do the slider box you'll see on the right-hand side last weekend. I picked it up on my way to work because we're still here in the office. And that was our dinner that night. So, and they offered I did it all online, the order, and then they offered to bring it out to the car for me as well. So I didn't have to go into the store if I didn't want to. Even one of our health food shops said do your smoothie bowls, and now you can get a take-home pack, so you can do it yourself over the weekend as well. So that's some interesting things that have been happening. Some examples of different retailers, because we talked a lot about food last week, and that has been the focus for a lot of towns, but we've got some really interesting retailers. So Let the Children Play is a toy shop, and they've responded really well. So obviously lots of kids are home now, and they're seeing the challenge some of the parents and carers are having. So they're putting together little action packs for those businesses, for those children. And you ring up and you tell them about your child, and they'll put together something for you and then deliver it. They've moved their story time online. There's also actually ran this morning online. We've got the local nutrition shop doing deliveries, so free delivery locally, and phone orders, and like many gyms, they've gone to online classes as well. So it's just in different ways that they're all adapting. Beauticians obviously were closed down in the latest wave of restrictions. So we've got one of our local beauticians doing online kind of tutorials on how to do some of that care and maintenance yourself at home, and is delivering packs to do that. And another beauty parlour is doing removal kits, at-home facial kits, and again you can ring up order and they'll do delivery for you as well. Different businesses partnering up. So we've got the hairdresser and a local retailer. We've got a shoe shop there. You're promoting that they'll deliver out to your car. And there's a local physio as well there who's doing tele appointments as well if you don't feel comfortable going in for your appointment. So just different ways that they're all adapting. So that's just some of what we've seen. We're doing a phone around our city centre at the moment, collecting some of the information about how people are trading in different ways. So we're starting to collect that. And so we can house it somewhere for people to find. And it's interesting for us too as practitioners to see the different types of practices that are going on, and who'll maintain that as we shift through once those restrictions are starting to lift as well. So we're just continuing to evolve as they need to. We'll change our messaging as we need to. And I don't think anyone knows the answer to any of this yet, but we're just responding to the feedback that we're getting.
Thanks very much, Teona. And I think that that's certainly the case, that people are evolving very rapidly, and that many of these, it will be a game changer going forward. I know the meaning behind that we're hibernating, but I think for many businesses, when they come awake again, it'll be very different models from the ones that they've used in the past. Look, thank you, Teona, and we'll give you an opportunity to speak later, and certainly, in Robert's presentation, if you've got things that might be useful to add, please do so. But for now, I'll turn over to Robert Prestipino, who's got a presentation on the Mainstreet developments. Thank you, Robert.
Oh, hi, Kate. Yeah, it's just a bit of an update from last week. This is not really a big presentation today. It's just following on from, I suppose, the curiosity we put out last week of trying to get an experiment happening and testing what might be missing in as far as assisting Main Street traders through this transition. And I think, you know, the content that Teona's presented today is really, really incredible how quickly things are being put in place. And there's certainly a few questions I'd like to explore with Teona shortly. But what we're doing, we've just started contacting some of the local groups. And again, this is a bit of a local experiment. We're just talking in the Toowoomba regional area and talking to the Chamber and others and some of those public groups that have formed. And it's just interesting as we're starting to get some feedback about the way the community groups are thinking, and it's very much mirrors what Teona said too, that those, and I'm sure it's happened in other communities, the Facebook groups just have organically emerged by themselves, and they're very passionate, and they're pretty well established already. What we're finding then is that there's a bit of a gap between that 80% of businesses working out what they really want to do. Some of the early feedback is some of those have now already permanently closed, which I found a bit shocking already, that some of those businesses won't be coming back. So the real issue is how do we try and support those laggards that aren't the early adopters doing all the incredible stuff that you can see even in Mackay. And I think that database that Teona is talking about is going to be really, really useful for others to learn from, even probably other businesses. So what I want to do with that process, we've got some conversations underway, and we're just trying to get a few things happening locally and to see what might work, what might not work. Again, as Teona said, we really don't know what the solutions are, but we just need to, it's such a wicked problem, we just need to get out there doing stuff, and we'll just uncover where the gaps are. I suppose just to finish that a bit, what seems to be emerging is there is a really passionate, strong community will to support and buy local, which is, and some of those trends were pre-COVID. And there's those early adopter businesses pivoting, and they tend to be the younger businesses. So, and some of them are doing almost as much trade as pre-COVID. But there is that the big gap in Main Street that, speaking to some of the stakeholders, is still a question mark over which way that'll go. And some of the questions there is, you know, is it more an issue of strategy rather than tactics? And maybe this is something I'd like Teona to throw in on this, that what's come up in some of the feedback is that we might accidentally promote the tactic of going online, doing menus or whatever as the solution to the business model for the business. But we're shifting into this area of having customer loyalty, reputation, building your tribe. And I wonder if the strategy of business about connecting to consumers is as important as helping them with some of the tactics, which is tenderly, you know, accessing Facebook, all the things a lot of the 80% were refusing to do. But Teona, have you any thoughts around that in the sense of the strategy and the purpose and sort of the customer connection to the business? What you're seeing or thoughts on that?
I think, again, this is where the regions really will have an advantage as we go from response to recovery, in that we are generally loyal to those businesses. And I know I've made, even in my team, we've made a conscious effort every Thursday, because I said we're still at work at council. So it's around picking a different lunch place to order our lunch from each week, because we're grateful for the fact that we are still all in paid employment, and we want to do our bit to support. And you're getting a lot of that sense here. So you really do, you have an attachment to your local coffee shop, your local lunch place, your gym, your hairdresser, and you want to do you can to support them. There's been a local pub that they're promoting through a platform that you can buy, like pre-purchase your beer for when they open. So they're trying to generate some of that cash flow. So I think for customer loyalty, it's there and it's what's really keeping them going. I think there's probably not a lot of strategy in what's happening, to be honest. It's more that let's respond, react. We're doing our best, and I think consumers and customers are appreciative of that, and just, you know, sometimes it's taking a bit longer and everyone's learning how we do this, and a lot of people are moving online. So I think generally we're well placed as regions because we have that connection, and a lot of that campaign for us is about reminding people of the people behind those businesses. So, and the doors are closed, but you can see that family or that couple, or, you know, those owners that have been around a long time, who you're really supporting and who's behind that, and how we get to them. As Kate mentioned last week, there's so many places doing delivery and pickup, but they're not promoting that. So how do we get them to share that information? And it's really relying on their loyal customer base at the moment, who would support them no matter what in any form, and will hopefully come back to support them when the restrictions are lifted.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
It was really interesting talking to my local fruiterer. He says he has been busier in his shop than at Christmas time, which is usually his peak period. And this seems to be a lot of people who are choosing to buy local just so that they're not going into the big shopping centres. So I just thought that was very interesting that he and our local IGA, who have started offering deliveries, which they didn't offer before, are also saying that they're getting much more business at the moment than usual. So that's been very interesting. Be interesting to see how long that effect lasts afterwards.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting we have our, like most regional towns, we have our city centre, and then adjacent to that they built the Land Lease Centre, the big shopping centre, and a lot of those national retailers have closed their stores. So you've only got Target, Coles and Woolworths that are opening, Big W, but a lot of the smaller retailers are shut. So it's a ghost town in Caneland. But because in the city, parking is eased. That's always the biggest complaint for parking in your main streets. But so you can pull up, and a lot of those smaller places, they can be more responsive. So they're, delivering to your car. They'll bring it out to your car window. I was getting my coffee the other day, and I had to wait for them to bring the EFTPOS machine back in because they've had to run an order out and do a payment, for someone in their car. So I think it's really been a shift where most of my local government career it's been trying to support your traditional main street, up against the big guys. But now it's been this real shift back, and the change in human behaviour will be really interesting to see. It's devastating at the same time to see the main streets are empty, but I'm really proud of our business community at the same time, the way they've responded and reacted. And we even have one of our main street coffee shops do free small coffees the Saturday morning prior to Easter. So they just really wanted to say thank you to the community who has supported them. So yeah, they did free coffees, practicing social distancing, did all the right things, but they were just like so genuinely appreciative of the way the community has backed them during this time.
We've got a couple of questions here, one of which I want to go to straight away, which is how big is Mackay, and do you think this can apply to smaller towns of less than 10,000 people? We've lost your volume, Teona.
Sorry, I'm still no good at this. You'd think I'd be better by now. The urban area of Mackay is about 80,000 people. The whole LGA is about just under 120,000. So yes, it definitely is a bigger region in that sense. But given that campaign I talked about and doing the videoing, we're using about 20 local businesses to cut that together. They've all obviously donated their faces and their time. That's been about $5,000 to have that campaign all developed, rolled out and pushed out online. So it's not a lot of money, and it can be scaled up and down. And at this point, that's all we've really done. It's been my team reaching out, making phone calls, doing what we can. So I think it can be scaled to smaller councils that don't have those resources financially or, you know, in people to do that. So
thanks. I think, Robert, you've probably got something to say on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the really interesting challenge, isn't it? In the sense that within regions, there's a bit of tension between regional cities at one scale and then everyone else in the peri-urban and the smaller towns. And there is that regional cities just do have that advantage of scale and density. That doesn't have a challenge at all in the impacts, because I know they're just as severe in the main streets of regional cities right at the moment. One of the things with the smaller communities, and this is really something we're wanting, I suppose, more conversation and exploring over the next particularly months at the most, is how do we do that? Because there's that sort of tipping point of capability, capacity as your population shrinks, and the sort of more traditional mix of Main Street operators. So I think there's a lot of principles in what Teona's presented today that I believe are completely, you know, universal and scalable. It just needs certainly a bit more thought and probably a bit more leadership in the smaller scale populations, because there's just it's a lot more fragile. But yeah, I think there's a lot of communities that'll be wondering how it could adapt some of the innovation that even Teona's talking about today, that bring it down, that might make a difference in the 10,000, 5,000 community Main Street. There's some of the ones that might be a bit on the tipping point prior to COVID, which is a lot of feedback I'm getting, is some of the concern that, you know, after fire and flood and everything, those cash flows and those businesses were already, you know, the fires really knocked around a lot of tourism in certain parts where they were, that they're really pretty fragile. And then having this over the top is hugely challenging. And I think more than we might realise. But yep, I suppose it's sort of a process underway. But Kate, I'll go back to you. Is there any more questions coming there?
Yes, we've got another one, which I think we'd appreciate everyone putting in to the chat box their ideas. And this question's from Andrew, and he's saying, is there any sense at present about what brand new businesses could get started in the Main Street or CBD in the next few months?
Well, I can kick off one idea here. I know even just in the conversations had since last Wednesday, talking to key people in the Toowoomba area, that there's a local guy that started a delivery service with an app that is a interesting startup model that fits a space that Uber Eats doesn't serve. And I was pretty impressed, actually. I've been working on it for a couple of years. It's a bit of a timing point, but to me, he's already employing 18 casual people, helping out in connecting businesses, not just food, but other parts to the local community. So young guy, obviously fully versed with, you know, developing apps and all that. And I thought, wow, there you go. There's probably, I think there's going to be startup opportunities in the space for those young early adopters that are looking to plug some connection gaps using the technology in that. So that's one thing I've just run across this week. Teona, have you any thoughts on that up north?
It's been interesting to see, even as a consumer as well, the different response. So, I mean, you can't get, and I think it's like most places, you can't get gym gear anywhere here. You know, even puzzles. I know I've heard people struggling to get jigsaw puzzles. And we're working on a little community art project that one of our local retailers had about how do we preserve all these puzzles as a memento of this time and these families doing them, and one day hopefully turn them into like a street art project, and that's what we're having a look at now. So I think for us, we were just starting to come into recovery after, I guess, the mining downturn. So we were filling up as a city but still had a number of vacancies. I think it will be really interesting what we see set up. As I said, being a bigger region and a regional centre, most gaps for us are filled in the way, and we're trying to keep what we have going with, as I said, very slow foot traffic in the city at the moment. It is hard to make that case, I'd imagine. But with the services operating, you know, it'll come back. I know we've had Menu Log and Uber Eats as was relatively new for us anyway, so only small scale. Then a lot of our operators offer deliver direct themselves, and I think they're using it to keep some of their current workforce employed in different ways. So that's been really interesting. But I can't see any. We haven't had anything pop up yet. A lot of our agencies are doing really well in getting people online. But yeah, as I said, it will be interesting. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything yet that's popped up as a result of this.
We've got another comment in regard to this, saying that there are very many small businesses and micro businesses operating from home and around the periphery of main streets. Would they be likely to move in if the rents were not as high as they are? So, you know, some of the relief strategies that you've got at the moment, are they going to carry on, or could they carry on and attract new businesses into the main street?
I think a lot of what councils are offering, particularly around the fees and charges, and we're working on some ideas for when we do start to roll into recovery about how we can support those businesses. And for us, a lot of what we'll focus on is around bringing those activations back. I think in small scale, I think there'll still be a hesitation and we'll be slow to do big events. And that's the discussion we're having with our event organisers. But small scale activations to bring people back into the city, and around that messaging of it being a safe place, and the work that's been done in the meantime during shutdown. I know even through that Facebook group, a lot of those home businesses are surfacing around your baked goods and different things like that were pretty quiet in the past, but now I've seen this as an opportunity to really fill a gap. That have been quietly doing their thing, and now I've got this, you know, 10,000 people page that they can start to tap into, and they can be really agile as well. They're offering delivery. I've seen there's like cupcake kits as well, so you can pick it up and entertain your kids, and there's donut kits and all sorts of different things happening as well. And it would be great given these incentives. And we talked about our facade improvement scheme as well, which most regions have. And when we're reviewing our budget as an organisation, it's something we want to keep, because I think there's a way we can use that to incentivise people to, their shops have been shut for a number of months. How do we use that to get them cleaning up, freshening up their stores and being able to relaunch in a good way?
Yeah, a question, Teona, in the scale of sort of local government and agency, there's been sort of growing discussion about behavioural change, the permanent behavioural change that comes out of this. In the sense of social distancing, it'll be probably one of the last restrictions to be lifted. And if we say it takes only 30 days to create a habit, and we're going to be in social distancing way more than 30 days, I've already heard comments that people say, you know, I don't think I really, even when this is lifted, want to go back to a crowded coffee shop again. I just feel uncomfortable. And this whole way of thinking how we as agencies were looking at activating main streets through density events, in some ways that behavioural change will be probably one of the big challenges, because it sort of takes a lot out of your toolkit, doesn't it? In a sense that you can't say we want to crowd our main street again, because I don't think people are going to be too keen for that experience off the back of whenever social distancing is lifted. Have you any thoughts how this might actually impact even, you know, like local government thinking about strategies or tactics in a CBD, where traditionally it was all about trying to attract lots of people for big events? Any thoughts on that?
I think it will be challenging. We had to talk about that. We're talking about travel. Just having a conversation with our CEO about when borders might be lifted, and where would you go? Like, are you going to fly overseas, and using being a regional location as to an advantage that we might be seen as a safer, more appealing destination, either to live or to visit. It could suit us well in that regard, where we didn't really have a big contingent of international visitation, and we struggle to, you know, attract new residents. It's like now the messaging around regional communities can change a little bit. I think for towns, smaller towns, I think it's hard. We are being forced into social distancing and isolation to a degree, but the nature of the way we run our lives, I think people will slowly shift back. I think you'll see a lot of the younger people come back first. They're itching to get back out, you know, into the pubs and clubs, and just we're creatures of habit. So it's about really connecting up with your friends and your loved ones. So I think, again, for regional communities, it would be different, because I know, like, you go out and you see so many people you know, and you bump into people in different cafes and shops, and it's a social experience going out just to even do your groceries. So it will be interesting to monitor. Even in the city, we've had some really interesting responses. Our health and regulatory team, I've never been so quiet. We've had our lowest number of barking dog complaints ever, and because people are at home with their animals. So even as council, the way we're responding and reacting to different things is really different, and parking is not an issue. And yeah, it will be how we tailor that messaging, and I think that's where, as the council, will step back in and we'll morph that campaign into demonstrating the things you can do safely in the city. I don't think it will be a flood. We're pretty quiet here on the weekends and out of business hours, the nature of a region, but it'll be that messaging about, you know, it's safe to come back. We wouldn't do any big events. You know, I don't think it would be wise for any region to launch back in. I think even events that have been postponed a year will still look different in a year, and it might be a series of smaller things as opposed to one big event. And it might be still elements of online, like experience the city centre, dial in, councils delivering a lot of library services and community information services online. We might see a mix of events that you can attend in person, but you can also maybe dial in online. I think would be a really interesting thing to see start to in time.
I've got another couple of questions that have come in. One is that I guess it's around the price point. People who are offering delivery, etc., bearing the cost of that, or are they passing that on? What sorts of incentives have they got? Have you noticed? Are there differences in the price point?
Yep. Oh, some interesting stuff. I already learned this last week talking to people in that space, and it's interesting. And this is, I think, a real lesson that regional people understand, that the Uber Eats model, which is obviously city-based, its commission is anywhere up to 30%. I was told in the Toowoomba region it's 35% commission. So that comes straight off the restaurant's meal margin. And there's that issue there that the model a startup is looking at, and I find this really interesting. It takes on the point that Teona raised about loyalty in regions, that he's looking at a model to help the business operators to reduce that high commission rate, which just kills any profit in it, but it gives them some turnover. That pushing some of the delivery charge to the customer, a bit like when we buy something online, there's a postage fee, and we're happy to pay that. We've purchased a price. So by setting the meal price as a meal price plus a delivery charge, which isn't the quite charge to cover the cost, and the zones, that the customer then takes some, and in my mind, I think it's quite a great approach. So, well, it's delivery, I should pay something towards it. And that enables the operator then to reduce the percentage charge to the restaurateur quite significantly. So we're putting money back into the business, and the operator is through, and I think it's coming off that loyalty that our regional communities really do want to support businesses, and having a modest delivery charge, I don't think it's a negative. Where, you know, Uber Eats has gone the other way, saying we've got a price point, we're going to give the best price to the customer, which means the producer, and isn't this a common story, the producer gets gouged, so there's no profit left for the producer, and the man in the middle makes the profit. So I think this has created an opportunity to for innovators to rethink some of those models that are almost the opposite. But I think from a consumer's point of view, and Teona, what are your thoughts of that? Of, you know, like paying a $8 delivery charge to the meal, would you see that as a negative for a local business?
I mean, I think it's generally standard anyway in what traditional delivery food was offering, was requesting. So for what we're seeing, for the city centre, they'll do free delivery in the city centre zone, or it's a $5 charge outside of that. Some of our retailers in non-traditional, non-food businesses, like the nutrition shop, they're trying, because it's quite a big physical region, they're kind of allocating days. If you're in Serena, which is about a 30-40 minute drive south, they're saying, look, get your order and we're going to do Serena on Tuesday. Walkerton is kind of out west, and that's about a 30-minute drive. So they're doing that on a particular day. So they're doing free delivery, but trying to manage it within their business and, you know, keep the costs of their time and their travel at a reasonable level, rather than trying to cover the whole region. So they're trying to balance it in that way. So we've got a few food businesses that are out of the city that are charging a small fee, or they'll do it within their local area for free. And then outside of that, it's a nominal fee. But I'm certainly seeing more doing it direct themselves as businesses than using Uber Eats or Menu or
Yeah. I noticed in the box there's a question about taxis, and actually there's some interesting story I heard this week about that. And as we know, you know, the taxi industry is struggling with the impact of Uber, which is making the taxi industry rethink itself and innovate. But apparently the downtime for taxis is the peak time for delivery, and vice versa. And there's discussions underway in some regional areas where the taxi boards are interested in maybe providing a bit of that delivery. Obviously, it's got to be a discounted rate, in a way of getting utilisation of some of their vehicles in a time where, because clearly when the peak time for ordering is, people aren't going out, so they're not in the taxi, but in the peak time of going out, they tend not to do home delivery. So that question in the box there about taxis, you're quite right. There is, again, maybe some forced synergies in the taxi industry rethinking some of its model in better utilisation. So very interesting.
We've got a couple of other questions, or one's a comment, which I think is great, and we'll put this link in the communique that we'll send out afterwards, but it says Warrnambool, from Helen, this is, Warrnambool City Council ran an online event last Saturday night. Lounge Fest was a virtual concert celebrating our region's bands and musicians, had a great viewing audience. So I'll put that link on online. The other thing, which I think is worth looking at for a minute, is the role of the local Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And that links for me to another question, which is about whether or not councils are providing some video training during this time, or is that the right group? We've got next Friday, we're talking to the universities and the tertiary sector and their role in upskilling people during this period. But can you talk a bit about the role of Chamber of Commerce and Industry?
Yeah, look, I can kick that off. I think absolutely critical, and I do take the point of that question too. There's more than food and hospitality in the local chambers. And I suppose it's just the front end of the impact has been on hospitality at the front end of it. But yeah, any sort of strategies or solutions moving forward certainly you'd think would need to be championed by the local chamber, and in their broader membership base is in professional services and a whole lot of other aspects of the business mix. And some discussions to date, even with local chambers here, is that on their agenda, they're starting to think, yeah, well, you know, what's our CBD strategy post-COVID? Most chambers were already concerned, almost have ongoing strategies of trying to revitalise CBDs of regional towns and cities. You know, we've had a challenge there for a long time. But now they're starting to realise, wow, you know, yeah, what does this mean to our whole membership mix in the CBD, behavioural change, and I think they're starting to realise, well, no one knows the answers, as Teona mentioned earlier, but let's at least start asking some good questions. Let's get the conversation going. What will be the post-COVID strategy driven by the Chamber? I do think the Chamber members are the ones that are probably closest to the coalface. I have a lot of empathy for the local governments coming out of this. They're going to be, I think, just realise it's a big problem, and I really don't think they're going to know what to do without some serious advice from people on the ground like the Chambers of Commerce. So they might have even a more important role in this transition than the Chambers have ever had in identifying the right questions to ask, probably really saying where resources should be focused initially for the highest leverage. How do you get full membership benefit? I think a lot of those can't really expect outside organisations to be driving that. I really think, and then in Queensland, we've just finished local government elections. We've got a lot of councils and brand new councillors. They're thrown into a post-COVID challenge. I think they'd be wanting some ideas coming to them from places like the Chamber. Teona, your thoughts up there on that?
Yeah, I guess for us, as part of our recovery group, it's the Chamber as well as our heavy industry sector and our tourism sector. While heavy industry sector hasn't been impacted for us because the mines are still operational. So that's been ticking along, and if anything, that will be the thing that keeps Mackay going, and the Central Queensland region. But tourism obviously has had a significant impact, and that will be long-term impact. And yeah, we're all kind of struggling with how we manage that, or how that even recovers. So we're very much keeping everyone in that camp. We as a council maintain memberships to all those organisations and support the different industry development initiatives they do. Our Chamber's reached out. They run a big conference every year, and they're looking at taking that online, and have just asked will we support that, and we would. I see the Chamber of Commerce as vital, and our Chamber has a relationship with CCIQ for Queensland, in their really the messaging they're pushing out, because they've seen others fill the gap of the support local, buy local. They're filling the gap of that support around change to the employee relations change. So to the awards, to advice around leave provision and requirements under, you know, the fluid movement around workers and what you can and you're entitled to, and access to government support as well. So I've seen a lot of regions through the Economic Development Australia forums are providing that one-on-one support. So I think if we got to that stage here in Mackay, it's something we would engage the Chamber to help us with. I'm very generally how I run my program here is that we don't do that service delivery direct. There was a question about whether we run webinars. If there was a gap, generally how I operate is to find the industry agency or body to run that for us, so to fund them to deliver that, because I think it's great for them capacity building and to build their membership value as well. So we are looking at that, and they're looking at that webinar series for later in the year. But I really see they've got a big role to play in providing that legal advice, industrial relations, access to their professional services. So a lot of them have members that are lawyers, accountants, and the like. Just untapping that for the rest of the community. But that's where our Chamber's slotting in at this stage. We've also combined with Isaac and with Sunday as our neighbours to roll out the business survey. So we're using the Chamber and the industry group to help push that messaging out for us. But wherever I can, I'd look to put the industry groups at the front of those initiatives with training and support, and help fund them to do that, because they're all struggling. They've all lost their event income. I know our industry groups have stood down staff as well, so I've gone really quiet, but trying to run online networking and coffee catch-ups and the like. So we'll stick by them as much as we can, but would really encourage them to be the front face of that recovery.
Thanks very much.
So, Kate, is any more questions there, or things?
There's one. Oh, there's a couple have come through, so I'll just click on the button. And This is a question that's directed to all our listeners, which is, has anyone got specific examples of what their local chambers are doing? And the next is a question, does anyone have examples of business surveys they are conducting and what questions you are asking? So they're two general questions. You can certainly use the chat box to let us know what's happening in your region, or you can contact me afterwards, and if you've got some good examples, we might include them in a webinar moving forward. The two other questions, both from Andrew, is how critical in smaller towns and cities is having quality Wi-Fi in the main street? And are there any moves by federal government to provide funds and funds to do that? And then the other question is, how does the council justify putting ratepayers' money into the business sector? And how do they justify that to the other ratepayers? So
I think Teona should lead off on that one on council.
Do you want me to tackle the ratepayer one?
Yeah.
I guess quickly on this, I see a survey one come through too, and we as a region and Mackay with Sunday have used the rent plan survey, and it's free online at the moment, and they're breaking it down by LGA as well. So that's just one that we're pushing out to answer that question quickly. For ratepayers, I guess, and the way we spend money, it's always interesting working in economic development because we're kind of the nice to have, not the need to have. So I feel like we're always at a time of justifying our expenditure and our existence, and definitely coming in with a new council will be interesting as well. So for us, it's business as usual. I have what I call a strategic partnerships allocation. It's about maintaining those industry groups and those business sectors. And the stronger your chamber is and the more members they have, I think it's better for the region. So we align where we can. We are sponsors to all those main business groups. We partner on their big events as well. It's a win-win for us. We get our councillors get the opportunity to engage and participate in those, and we get our brand out there. And as I said, supporting them is generally, we see it as good for the region. So we partner where we can. It's never about giving funding for the sake of it. Any funding I give is always tied to an agreement where there's deliverables. Generally, they're deliverables that sit in my economic development strategy, where we partner with these organisations to help us deliver these outcomes. So yeah, thankfully it's all, we have really good relationships here. Again, that's where regions really come into their strength, that we can, the chamber then will turn around, or the industry groups will turn around and back us on our initiatives and help us roll out different projects as well.
Yeah, I know a lot of the tension can be sometimes between scale of business support in regions, because naturally the bigger the enterprises, the more employment, there's more focus. And I think what COVID's exposing a bit is the micro business, the entrepreneur, the startup, and they're often even not the main focus of Chamber of Commerce, to tell you the truth, because they're sort of, you know, ma and pa thing, and some of the home-based businesses. But that the COVID and this online thing has just sort of created a lot of activity in that space, and I think it's going to be interesting, challenging maybe traditional, because, you know, everything post-COVID is going to be different. A question would be, you know, some of the Chamber of Commerce structure and way of doing things, or businesses they focus on, it could be the micro agile ones that pivot and maybe fill the gaps in our CBD first, and they might need be completely different to the traditional chamber approach. And yeah, I just think that's going to be an interesting tension that to be addressed out of the sort of COVID impacts.
Look, we're running out of time. I just want to, and I think that we'll try next week to get some chambers of commerce to come and speak to some of these questions, because I think we've raised a number of things that would be worth looking at. But just got a reply to the question about good business services. Business Victor Harbour has just put out a cracker of a survey, and the challenge is, as always, is going to be getting seriously good analysis of the data and doing the correlations. This is where the unis need to step up and help. So I'll take that as a question for the next webinar, which is about the role of universities. Now, Robert, I know you've hot off a phone call with your local Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Did they talk about what they were doing for COVID at this point, or was that not?
Oh yeah, look, it's top of mind. It's really, they're now, like a lot of people saying, we need to start prepared for post-COVID and really work out where should we focus, what should we do, start those discussions. And I think getting at the point of, you know, what are the questions to ask? And I think that's probably where we are at the moment. Why we've been running all these webinars is just trying to understand what are the right questions to ask at this point. And everyone seems to, you know, feel the same. It's in such a state of flux. There's big changes happening, but we don't fully understand them. So yeah, no, I think there's going to be some interesting stuff there. And if we could get a few chamber people on, I think that could be a great conversation as well.
We're running out of time, and so I firstly want to thank you, Robert and Teona, for being part of this teleconference webinar, which I think has gone extremely well. Before we wrap up, Teona, is there any last closing remarks you'd like to make?
No, I think I've really covered it all. I will, as the campaign gets finalised, if anyone in here wanted to add me on LinkedIn, I'll probably push it out, and I'm happy to share any of those materials as well. So keep your eye out. But yeah, I'm really excited to see the finished product of that, and I hope it has the impact.
Yes. Yeah, terrific. Well, look, thank you everyone very much for your participation. We will circulate a communique that captures the ideas in today's conversation and remarks that have come up in the chat box. We also have our latest news section on the SEGRA website under the general button. And also, as I said, you can re-listen to this webinar via our YouTube site. So if you've got someone who you think would be interested in it, certainly feel free to share that with them. If you'd like to contact me directly, my email is kate@segra.com.au or robert@vitalplaces.com.au. We've been running these webinars on Wednesdays and Fridays, and our next webinar will be around what you can ask of your local universities, and looking particularly at the National, Regional, Rural and Remote Tertiary Education Strategy, which was released in June last year, with quite a few demands placed on regional universities. So it'll be interesting to see where they've gotten to in progressing that. Okay, well look, thank you all very much for your participation, and we look forward to our next webinar on Friday. Thanks, Teona. Thanks, Robert.